Previously on Ready to Love Potomac, we see snippets of young Wiley sharing that his huge football championship ring is from his glory college football days at Virginia Tech. We also see Clifton and Joy chillaxing together. They seem to have great chemistry. Clifton even shares in his confessionals that so far Joy is his realest connection. And then we see Paul, or should I say P.O., who, in my opinion, does not deliver, asking questions rather aggressively to Ace regarding her past divorce. She's cringing and he's clueless. I don't know. I think Paul chooses to act clueless because in his mind, it's all about him. Insert several sighs and several eye rolls. Please, y'all, send Paul home like yesterday. And of course, speaking of going home, last week we saw Fernando and Kim promptly get sent home, bringing us to the remaining dozen singles who are now meeting up for a brunch mixer. Tiffany tells us in her confessional that she's trying to figure out why she was at the bottom last week. I think she'll find out more really soon. What do you guys think? Even though, in my opinion, Tiffany is really one of the prettiest women on the cast, but something in her personality seems to be preventing her from connecting with the rest of the men. Nephew Uncle Tommy makes his hey, hey, hey entrance and then explains that besides the smaller group, there are more curveballs coming. One new man and one new woman, and singles, and these two singles will be added, not in a not in a new way, but by blind dates. Ace is selected from the remaining women, and Laverne is selected from the men to go on the blind dates. Tommy suggests to Vern that he actually listened to the woman's answer when he asked her questions. Meanwhile, Takaya tells Demetrius that he has given her BDE. That's Big D Energy, if you're not familiar with the acronym. Seriously, I didn't make this up. Takaya said it. And at the other table, Tiffany is talking to handsome Wiley, and Wiley seems moderately interested, but later we see him leave holding hands walking with Takaya. And as the brunch is ending, Clifton and Joy are alone on a small sofa away from the group. He seems oblivious to the fact that the event is ending and he wants to spend more one on one time with Joy. Joy doesn't appear to mind either. Clifton asks her to stand up and then proceeds to ask her for a hug. They embrace tightly, in which he lifts her off the floor in his one arm. This 6'4" cuddly teddy bear is a beautiful thing. Now, personally, I think that Clifton and Joy have lots of chemistry, sexual tension, and I'm interested in seeing what develops between them. Now, on to the blind dates. Carmen tells us that the new girl, Carmen, tells us that she's a boss chick. Well, and then she meets Laverne. She offers him a big hug. They settle into the outdoor patio table, and the two former Air Force vets begin to talk about their workouts. They talk about they're both divorced. They both have children. He has two, and she has one son. And all basically this date seems darn near perfect because apparently Laverne really prefers to have an alpha female. So I'm not really sure whether Laverne is an alpha male or if he's a beta male, but we shall see. What do you guys think? Please drop down in the comments section and give me your thoughts and opinions. Next up, we see Cornelius, who's really cute, a little chubby, but cute. And he's a realtor and a real estate investor. And he's on a blind date with Ace. The conversation flows as they discuss their experience with therapy and things that are helping them to hold themselves accountable in their lives. They both seem to be very attracted as Cornelius asks Ace for her digits and she goes ahead and gives them to her. Oh Lord, now Joy meets Paul for what looks like after work drinks. Surprisingly, Paul actually remembers Joy's favorite drink contains vodka and some lime juice. So now he's questioning her about how does she feel about settling down. Um, she kind of turns and gives him a neutral look. And on the other side of town, Takaya and Clifton are meeting for wine and cheese on a charcuterie board. Hopefully, none of them are lactose intolerant. Now, back over to pretty obnoxious Paul and Joy. Joy very gently but firmly explains to Paul that just the phrase settling down practically makes her nauseous. Paul, who's missing all the clues as usual, goes on to tell Joy that at his big age, he's finally ready for marriage. Yes, he's ready to make some unfortunate woman very, very miserable. Meanwhile, back to the other dates. We see Dakaya with Clifton, and they're getting ready to in the date, but she tells him that yes, she would have to test drive her man in the bed before marriage, which he's okay with. He says that's not a problem for him, of course. Um, they end the date with a hug, and once again, we notice that Clifton likes to lift the ladies up off the ground. Anyway, um, the group dates are interesting. Cornelius and Paul are meeting up for ping pong and pizza with Tiffany, Precious, and Sabrina. All three women are bringing the looks and the sex appeal. Paul and Cornelius challenge the ladies to a game, but Paul, once again, clueless as usual, did not get the memo that the game wasn't meant to be his tryout against Venus and Serena at Wimbledon. Shaking my head. Later on, Charming Precious is giving interrogator Paul some of his own medicine. He still doesn't seem to get it. He proceeds to interrogate the other women with more pointless questions in his aggressive manner. And yes, I use the word aggressive. I'm not recanting. I'm not taking it back. I said what I said. I think Paul, I've got a problem. I think that Paul's personality is very rigid. He doesn't really have any self awareness, and he never seems to be able to read the room. Now, Tiffany and Cornelius on marriage, she's asking Cornelius, the new guy, what does he think about marriage? And he's kind of waffling. Maybe he's for marriage, maybe he's just for a long term relationship. He doesn't really give a definitive answer. And Tiffany, unfortunately, it seems a little bit too invested in it because she decides to just kind of say, well, you know what? I'm for marriage. And if you're not for marriage, I'm not fooling around with you. And while I think that's okay for us ladies to think that, but for the purpose of this dating show, I would have left those thoughts inside my head and I would have just smiled and in my mind made a check mark, and I would have just moved on without having to tell him all my business. Tiffany, unfortunately, seems to lack self control. And I think that she's blowing her chances here. And she's a really attractive looking woman. And I don't know if she's not ready for love, but I think she could use some work on just how to deal with stress and how to deal with her frustrations. That everybody she meets in dating is not going to end up being her husband. She only needs one fellow for that. The rest of them are just going to be the guys you date, the ugly frogs you might have to kiss before you get to your Prince Charming. And so in the next group date, we see Carmen, Ace, and Joy. Um, Tori apparently has a thing for women's kidneys, as he's telling Joy this. I don't know if dude's been watching too much porn, but I thought that was just a little bit wild. I don't know if that was production driven or what. What you guys think about Carmen? Okay, the new gal, Carmen. She's in the group date and they're playing golf. She's playing with Clifton. And Clifton says, "Oh my God, sweet baby Jesus, those blue eyes really turned him off." And I could see his point. I don't think they were very flattering. I think that Carmen's a nice looking woman. She's very attractive, but something about those blue eyes that's just kind of like, for me, it's straight out of a horror movie. But anyway, the elimination dates, we move on to the elimination dates, and we see that both Tiffany and Ace are taken out. Tiffany unfortunately has the bad misfortune of being asked out by Paul. Oh my gosh. And of course, Paul is doing his usual thing, asking 1,001 pointless questions, all to get to the point that he's just so tickled pink that he gets to eliminate Tiffany. Now, to Tiffany's point, her credit or discredit, unfortunately, she didn't really take it very well. She really was blindsided by it, and she got the cursing and the f bombs were just a dropping, and she just wasn't really very graceful about it. And honestly, I don't think her guy was there. So, in hindsight, maybe when she looks back at it, she'll recognize that. What do you guys think? Drop down in the comments section, and I'll see you soon back here on Actually Aubrey.